this research into animal flu viruses and the ability for these mutations to cause pandemics. We then get through to 2012 and they start focusing on these H5 viruses and the ability for them to preferentially recognize human type receptors. So they start tinkering around with these viruses. Now, this all gets put on pause in 2014 in the United States, and this ties into like Fauci and gain of function research. And so a lot of this had to go outside the US, and you hear about the biolabs in Ukraine, the Doherty Institute in Australia, and these other places where it obviously continued. Now, fast forward to 2015 and the Gates Foundation, they're accelerating their investments into this mRNA technology because they see it as a data carrier to instruct the human body to produce its own proteins. And this, is responsible for the wide range of, devastating side effects we've seen from the COVID rollout, with its hijacking the body's immune system. Now, we get to 2017 and CEPI, the Coalition for the Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, is founded. And this is founded by the Gates Foundation as well as the Wellcome Trust and a few governments. It's all set up at the World Economic Forum. And basically, this group wants to tinker with viruses, create them, and then already have the remedy, the vaccine, ready to go in a nutshell. But when we look at who's behind the Wellcome Trust, we find Julia Gillard as the chairman of the board. Now, she's tied in, as I've covered in videos, with the Epstein Network, the Clinton Foundation, which she shoveled millions of dollars through. If you haven't been down that rabbit hole, you can watch my videos on all this. But Epstein was obsessed with genetics and hybridization. This is all part of their global eugenics, depopulation, New World Order agenda. So this Australian company, Zoetis, gets a grant from the Gates Foundation to start producing these vaccines for animals, for livestock. And it's always tested in these places like Africa, which you can kind of be buried if it gets into the media and all that type of thing as well. So fast forward to 2025, obviously we're now post-COVID, and I predicted that this was the year they're going to push another pandemic. And so they're starting to supercharge their response, and H5N1 is what they were doing all this research on. None of this is a coincidence. And they're calling this the platform to target the bird flu as a prototype for a potential disease X. So they were predicting this a year ago, that this could be the next pandemic, transitioning from animals to humans, after they've been doing all this research on how to do that. So we now look in mid last year where they're starting to develop and test these vaccines on king penguins that have, birds have been around for millions of years and never had a problem with the flu or anything. And now we're injecting self-amplifying mRNA. So this is the next stage of development post the COVID vaccines. Again, self-amplifying technologies that have been injected into our natural wildlife. And I'll get to where this is all heading at the end. And then we get to December. So what's this, 8-9 months ago, where Moderna scores this contract to start funding the bird flu. So they cancelled other contracts that they had and said, let's go all in on bird flu. Again, there's no coincidence that a year later they're pushing this as a pandemic. And so we fast forward to what we're seeing today. Australia is the test bed for the New World Order, and they're planning to vaccinate 5,000 penguins. They need to do it twice, and so they're talking about chipping them. Like, this is just insanity. I don't know how anyone takes this seriously. And once again, they're saying that this won't stop it from circulating. So remember how we were promised that if you get the COVID vaccine, you can't get COVID, it stops the transmission. All that was a lie. It didn't stop you getting it, it didn't stop you transmitting it. It was just all lies. Now, this is a broader initiative. So they want to talk about these other species that they want to protect, animals in zoos, whatever. So this is just the start. And I spoke about in my 2026 predictions video how this was going to pull at the heartstrings, and maybe they were going to target children or something, but it was going to pull at the heartstrings to get people on board with whatever the new pandemic is. So just a reminder, there's been no detections of this bird flu, and you can even get into how this is tested, and the inventor of the PCR test, Kerry Mullis, talking about how these aren't even diagnostic tools. You can swab anything and find anything if you spin it up enough cycles. Now, where this starts to get really scary is this Aussie company, Zoetis, and all these other researchers that are now looking at these vaccines that are, or mRNA has already been injected into some of our cattle, but they've got the whole, food supply chain possibly that they want to poison us through. And this is the really scary thing for me. So